All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the A to Z Poll podcast. My name is Zachary Siegel and I'll be your host. I got the pleasure this weekend of going to Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, to go see Navy play Tulane. As you guys can see, I got the Tulane hat right here, where is it? Right here, which I have worn in videos before. But I got this Navy hat, and I'm not totally sure if that's stolen valor or not, so I haven't really worn it out. But for these purposes, it is purely just college football related. Uh, that being said, if you like college football, if you like this content, make sure you go like and subscribe. Make sure to follow. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Twitter. Just about everywhere you can think of. So, with the shilling out of the way, we have another edition of the CFP Committee poll. So that reads as number one. Sorry about that. Number one, Oregon. Number two, Ohio State. Number three, Texas. Number four, Penn State. Number five, Indiana. Number six, Notre Dame. Number seven, Alabama. Number eight, Miami. Number nine, Ole Miss. Number 10, Georgia. Number 11, Tennessee. Number 12, Boise State. Number 13, Southern Methodist. Number 14, BYU. Number 15, Texas A&M. Number 16, Colorado. 17, Clemson. 18, South Carolina. 19, Army, 20 Tulane, 21 Arizona State, 22 Iowa State, 23 Missouri, 24 UNLV, and 25 Illinois. Now, right off the bat, this seems like one of the worst CFP committee lists I have seen, really in a long time. They've only been making them a few years, but this just doesn't. There's just so much blatant incorrectness, it feels like, on here, that I'm not even sure really what they're getting at. Um, but that being said, we're going to break down the five biggest things that I noticed from this list, and we're going to talk about it. Before we get into that, real quick though, um, if the playoffs were to start today, it would go with how everyone's ranked, obviously excluding the actual playing of the conference championships. Oregon would be the one seed, Texas would be the two seed, Miami would be the three seed, Boise State would be the four seed. Then it would read Ohio State five, Penn State six, Indiana seven, Notre Dame eight, Alabama nine, Ole Miss 10, Georgia 11, and then BYU, provided they win the Big 12, at number 12. So the thing that I was talking about last week, where if the Big 12 or ACC championship is lower than the Mountain West or AAC champion, then they would end up taking that 12 seed, and the bye would go to Boise State, or provided whoever wins that other conference. All right, let's get into it. So that was kind of actually my first point. So what I talked about last week, Big 12 is the 12th seed right now if it were to end today, assuming that Boise State survives the last 2 weeks. Even if Boise State drops one, it seems like the committee is just really not in the favor of the Big 12. I don't necessarily think they don't like anyone particular in there, but I do think that there is definitely an innate and inherent bias within the committee to just almost treat the ACC and Big 12 like their group teams. Um, and I personally, I don't think that's fair, but I'm not the one they're paying to be on this committee. Now, at this point, right? Boise State is undefeated. They have one loss, and they dropped from number five or six in the country all the way down to number 14. Is that valid? So that brings me to my next point. So, first point was just merely noticing that Boise State would be that fourth seed provided they win the Mountain West, and BYU provided they win, or whoever wins the Big 12, if it could in theory be lower than the Mountain West team. Also could be lower, like a team like Arizona State, who's been on a run, is lower than Tulane, which we'll talk about later, and both Tulane and Army, meaning that in theory, if they keep going out, a real underdog wins the Big 12, and one of a Tulane or Army wins the AAC, we could see a Big 12 less, uh, college football playoff. Do I think that's going to happen? It feels unlikely, but bringing us into this, I'm not sure because there is, like I said, some innate bias. Just kind of, it's almost like against the Big 12. I thought it was the ACC and the Big 12, but based off my next point, which is BYU being under SMU, I don't really get that. Um, because if you look back, SMU's one loss this season was to, you guessed it, BYU. They're literally right next to each other. SMU's 13th, BYU is 14th. Technically, that has BYU in the playoff, but why rank them lower than SMU? You just decided to do that, committee. Like that again, that was just a ranking off vibes. What I was talking about last week. So ranking off vibes, and I don't really know what vibes you're going off of because you had BYU in the top five last week. SMU is now you literally just like is head to head not valued at all? Like where does that come into play if it's not worth playing? Like why do we even play the games if you're just going to choose the best team, choose whatever team you think is the best? Because again, BYU beat SMU head to head. This isn't like maybe a point we're going to talk about later where two teams played a team very differently and maybe a third party team. No, BYU and SMU strapped up their football helmets and walked onto a football field and BYU won. Right? It wasn't like, oh, like they think in theory they could have. No, BYU played 60 minute football SMU and they won the football game. I don't know really what else they would have to do besides, I guess, not lose any other games. But why is BYU being punished more so for their one loss than SMU is, considering that SMU's one loss came by the hands of BYU? Um, Again, this is just like a BYU didn't win. So if BYU ends up if BYU doesn't win the Big 12 and we have a team, I think a team like Colorado, because of the national media, because of Shadur Sanders, because of Deion Sanders, because of Travis Hunter having the potential Heisman winner, I think that they would probably get a favor over an AAC team. But like if a team like BYU or Colorado doesn't win, does the Big 12, does the committee respect the Big 12 enough to give them, a spot? I don't know. Um, I really don't know. And I think that part of the playoff situation in general is because there is a selection committee and it isn't just somehow merit based. Um, and I think this could also happen with the ACC, right? If a team like it's not like SMU is top 10, right? If a team like SMU wins or, a Clemson wins or, even some other team further down the line, like just say I know is Pitt still able to win if they come out of nowhere? Do they end up being ranked higher than two non-power conferences? I don't know. So this is just an unprecedented situation. Uh, Number three. So we kind of flew by those first two. So let's talk about number three. Number three is a multi-part kind of noticing, but it's the two teams I'm highlighting in this are Indiana and Notre Dame. They're not really being punished for their easy schedules. Well, I don't think teams should be punished for their easy schedules. They shouldn't be rewarded for them as greatly either. Now, I get it. You can only play the team that's in front of you. That makes sense. But why is Indiana number five and Notre Dame number six while like Miami is number eighth, right? Like Miami has one loss and it's to Georgia Tech, a team that historically they've had a problem with. I understand Indiana hasn't lost. That's totally fine with me. I understand. But they really haven't played anyone difficult. Now, this I could be totally proven wrong, and I think that Indiana's a really good team. Again, I can be totally proven wrong this week when they play Ohio State, and they've been blowing out their opponents. And I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that Indiana is not a good team. I'm saying they haven't played good competition. Now, if they go out and beat Ohio State, more credit, more power to them. Who knows? Maybe they'll go and give Oregon a run for their money if they can make it to the Big Ten championship. But Notre Dame, on the other hand, that is a completely different story. Notre Dame hasn't really had many quality wins, right? Like Louisville turned out to be not a whole lot. They're not ranked anymore. Navy isn't ranked anymore. Florida State wasn't ranked when they even played them, but that's pretty much it, right? Um, Texas A&M is their best win, and I don't even know. Are you considering them? That impressive a win, considering it was Mike Elko's first game coaching his squad, and I just don't understand where it's coming from when they lost to a team like Northern Illinois. Again, do matchups not matter? Like Notre Dame lost to a really, really bad team, right? Last week I said it in Northern Illinois team that might not make a bowl game. They're like 6-5 right now, right? So you're looking at Notre Dame, the supposed sixth best team in the country, who can't win a championship to make it in, who can't. They are doing everything in their power to boost the SEC by boosting a Texas A&M loss week one that will allow them to continue this level of dialogue of the Big Ten and the SEC have losses because they're all so good, and the ACC and Big 12 have losses because they're all just so bad. That level of dialogue is purely, I think, one of the reasons why Notre Dame is being pushed up, and just the Notre Dame brand. Although it isn't a although it isn't a conference, that means it doesn't have to pay any money out to a conference, and therefore, Notre Dame is just gonna be there. They haven't really played. They essentially play, a mixed up ACC roster. So I'm just curious where the decision comes in after again losing to Northern Illinois, why they end up being the sixth team in the country. And again, like a team like Miami, who lost to Georgia Tech, who has some quality wins this year and isn't necessarily a pushover team, a much better team than Northern Illinois, is two spots lower. I'm not saying that Notre Dame should be totally out of the playoffs, which it kind of feels that way. I personally would probably have them a good 10 spots down, but I do think that it is worth noting that if for some reason the committee favors a Notre Dame team that it really has not proven anything. Number four. So I mentioned earlier Tulane over Arizona State and what the implications could be if an Arizona State ends up winning the Big 12. And, both of the top two seeds in the AAC are Army and Tulane, and one of them wins. Well, they're currently ranked higher. Again, what is wrong with with playing legitimate matchup games here? Tulane lost to Kansas State. Now, this isn't the direct correlation of BYU SMU, where BYU laced up their pads, played 60 minutes of football, and beat SMU. But it feels like still pretty empirical evidence when I point out the fact that Tulane earlier this year, one of their couple losses was a pretty embarrassing loss to Kansas State. It wasn't the worst loss in the world. They held their own, but they still lost to Kansas State. Arizona State, on the other hand, beat Kansas last week. They beat the best version of Kansas State that we have seen. I said Kansas. They beat the best version of Kansas State that we have seen all year because every team is the best version of themselves later in the season. Obviously, barring some crazy injuries, every team who has played with each other for the entire season, who's gotten experience, who's gotten to play with each other, is going to be the best version of their team. So Arizona State just beat a better version of the team that beat Tulane. So, committee, explain to me why Tulane is higher than Arizona State, if not specifically just to prop up your notion that the Big 12 and the ACC are just not as good of teams. I mean, you don't have to prop it up anymore. It's just painfully obvious in your rankings, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I understand it's a poll. I understand there's it's not just somebody. A lot of people didn't just you guys didn't as a group come together and consciously say Tulane over Arizona State, but a lot of you guys did just sit there and consciously put Tulane over Arizona State. And I don't understand this workplace negligence that you're putting together as part of your ivory tower of just our word is final, right? The CFP committee sounds like a parent telling their kid they can't have broccoli for dinner. And I said that right. We're not asking as fans, we're not asking for ice cream for dinner. We're asking for you to treat the teams and the players fairly. It doesn't feel like to me like you're giving all these teams a fair look. And even if it is a poll, even if, that's just how the voting turned out. You're the committee. You've proven time in and time out you don't care about rules. You don't care about anything but what your word is. So just switch the teams if you want. I understand Army over Arizona State. They're undefeated. But you're going to sit there and tell me that Tulane is a better team than Arizona State right now. You're going to sit there and tell me that BYU, a team who laced up their shoes, strapped up their helmets, practiced for a whole week, ran out onto a field and beat SMU. You're going to tell me that BYU was worse than SMU at this point in the season? I'm just simply not buying it. And if there's a team that's dealt with injuries, SMU has dealt with way more injuries. They've lost their star player, RJ Maryland, for the year. And you're going to tell me that this version of SMU is an upgraded version that's better than BYU. I simply just am not buying it. Moving down the list, after Arizona State, you got like your Iowa States, your Missouris, your UNLVs, your Illinois. Obviously, if a UNLV is the best option or the best chance to beat Boise State in the playoff, if something like that were to happen, we could even see a Mountain West completely get absolved of the playoffs. If we see like a BYU win the Big 12, Boise State lose the Mountain West championship, and UNLV win it, we could even see like an Army make it over a Tulane. Or Army or Tulane, whoever wins that over, anybody from the Mountain West, which really wouldn't be a problem at all because that's just how it all shook out. That's how the conference champions got there. That's how some of these previous rankings by just the AP poll, the committee, whoever else cares to decide, ended up it ended up shaking out. And finally, my last point. Um, is a little bit, this has kind of felt like a rant, but it's felt almost necessary in this sport. It's not all bad. It's awesome. I love it. It's what I live for, right? But there definitely are some things to complain about, and I think if people don't complain, that just breeds the sows the seeds of people doing whatever they want and not, and this turning into what we don't want it to be. This is an entertainment based business. If it's just keeps going in a negative direction and people keep complaining, it eventually will change and there will be things that happen. Now, part number five, the Indiana versus Ohio State game this weekend, while will be hopefully a really good game and will be really fun to watch, and I will probably watch it. Not probably, I will watch it on my phone at the Southern Methodist Virginia game that I will be going to this weekend. If anyone's there, let me know. I'll see you. It does not matter. Both teams, barring some craziness, are going to make the playoff. Indiana with two losses will probably make the playoff over SMU with one loss, or maybe a loss in the conference championship. They might even make it over, a Texas A&M with two losses, or definitely a Colorado or a Clemson. Really, anybody under 15 and less won't be taking over Indiana's spot with two losses. And Ohio State, conversely, I think could absolutely and would absolutely make the college football playoff with three losses. Do I think they'd win? They could win the Big Ten like that? No, it just mathematically wouldn't work out. But if Ohio State loses this game, I still think the committee is going to put a 9-3 Ohio State in uh, over a 9-3 Illinois, a 9-3 Mizzou, a 10-2 Iowa State, a 10-2 Arizona State, uh, a 10-2 Tulane, so on and so forth. That I think it just doesn't matter. College football is college football. I watch games that don't matter all the time. Buffalo Ball State 2 weekends ago, some Tuesday night action was one of the best college football games I've watched all year. It was awesome. If you haven't seen it, go watch the highlights. But that didn't matter. It's still good college football. What I will say though is that as much as being hyped up, it doesn't matter because the committee has shown their hand. The committee knows something crazy is going to happen. Like I'm talking like Ohio State getting blown out of the water on this, or even taking a fourth loss. And even in Ohio State with a fourth loss, I am not totally convinced that they would miss the playoff. Or Indiana, again, I talked about easy schedule. This is going to be their hardest game of the year so far. Just getting blown out and then maybe even losing another one or two. Or they can only lose one more after this. So maybe then losing even another. So that being said, I think that while I'm excited to watch the game and I am excited to to see this game because I love college football. I It just doesn't have any real playoff implications the way that I think a lot of people are hoping that it does. Alrighty. That was a little bit felt a little bit of a darker episode. It felt like a rant. Like I kind of said, it feels like a necessary rant, and I'm those were just my initial and honest thoughts and opinions on the CFP committee's top 25. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you like and subscribe. Go find us on Twitter, A to Z Poll Podcast. You can find some more college sports content from some West Virginia stuff on Hoops from the Hills. I'm on there as well. Um, Check out some other videos if you haven't. And let me know in the comments what you think about this SEC Big Ten supremacy that's happening, if you think it's valid, if you think it's not. But that being said, I hope everyone has a good week. I hope everybody gets to go watch some college football, and I hope your team wins. Bye bye.